All right, Church of Lexington, how are you doing? Good to see everybody here. My name is David Petrille. I'm one of the pastors at the church. Mike's happy now, and it's just good to be here. Let's pray. God, I just ask that you open your word to us. I ask that I speak what you want me to speak. I ask that you lead us and guide us into obedience and in love and commitment to you. In your name, amen. So it's a little cool in here this morning, isn't it? They knew I was preaching this morning, and so they didn't want anybody to get warm and cozy and fall asleep. So that's why actually they're testing the AC unit. It's going through a test as we're trying to get things together and make it not quite so loud in here and still cool well. It's working, right? It is working. It is working. So we are going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 8 this morning. This mic is an attempt for me to be a little smoother in my transitions between playing and preaching. We had some problems with it in the first service, so I'm not going to use the stand. We may think the metal might have something to do with it. Who knows? We're just grasping at straws. So somebody said something with me looking like now I can't remember his name. Garth Brooks, that's right. Somebody said we were looking like Garth Brooks. Long time ago when I was leading worship at another church, I was playing bass and leading worship at this church, and one old lady said, he needs to have a mic that's attached to his head. And so she gave me one, and they told me I looked like Janet Jackson, so I guess I'm moving forward. Anyway, 1 Samuel 8. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah, and they said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord. And the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you that they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So now they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights." And so Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. And he said, "This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cookers and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." But the people refused to listen to Samuel. "No," they said, "we want a king over us, and then we will be like all the other nations with a king to lead us and go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard that all the people said, he repeated it before the Lord, and the Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." And Samuel said to the Israelites, "Everyone go back to your own town." So we have this passage in Samuel This is a transition between leadership through judges and prophets to leadership through kingship in the history of Israel. And we have this because I think God is speaking to us because he understands that it's easy for us to just do our own plans, come up with our own ideas, and execute them. That's not the way we're to live as believers. What this passage tells us is that God is king, and that we should trust God to lead us. God is king, and we should trust God to lead us. And this passage, I think, gives us three things to look out for as signposts for us when we are not trusting God. Three signposts. We should trust God to lead us. He is king. We should trust him to lead us when we don't like or trust our leaders. So Samuel's leading these people after the time of the judges, which was a failed period of leadership. We have these judges. It's a complete failure. There's 4 major judges in the book: Barak, Gideon, Jephthah, and Samson. We know Gideon and Samson. Usually the other 2 are harder for us to remember, but 4 of them. And so Samuel is leading these people, and he's doing a great job. Nobody has any complaints. He's doing exactly what he needs to do, and he's doing exactly what God has called him to do. And so he's after Samson. Samson is the last judge, the last major judge in the book of Judges. He's a complete failure, according to the book of Judges, okay? And Samuel is his counterpart, who is a complete success. So, Samson, born of a barren woman. Samuel, born of a barren woman. Samson, a Nazirite, from birth, for life. Samuel, a Nazirite, devoted to God, from birth, for life. Samson's job, deliver his people from the Philistines, doesn't do it. Samuel's first act of leadership, it's not his first act, you can tell from the scriptures, but his first act of leadership that's detailed for us in the scriptures is defeating the Philistines. And for the life of Samuel, the Philistines are not an issue. And so God is leading his people in the way he wants. Samuel's boys, though, are not quite the upright, standing citizens that listen to God like Samuel is. And Israel's leadership complains, look, your sons are corrupt. We need a new plan. We can't work with your sons. And so they ask for a king. Now, this is not necessarily a bad plan. This is actually a plan that they've desired for a long time. They've desired since Gideon, as a matter of fact. Gideon does what God has told him to do and leads Israel to freedom and lack of oppression from those who are oppressing them. And they ask for him, look, why don't you be king? You've done such a great job. You'd make a great king. Be king. Gideon's answer is, no, I will not be your king, and my son will not be your king. The Lord will be your king. Right answer. Although we see in the book of Judges where this is headed, because although this is Gideon's statement to the people, his last son, the baby, is born, and he names him Avimelech, which means my dad's the king. And so we know they're heading in this direction, but not necessarily a bad plan. It's an old desire, and it's a promised blessing. Genesis 17, 3-6 says, when Abram was 90 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithful and blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly increase your numbers. And Abram fell face down, and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, For I have made you the father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. And so this kingship is a blessing. It's a blessing given to Abraham and his descendants. Numbers 24, 5 through 7. How beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Like valleys, they spread out like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. Water will flow from their buckets. Their seed will have abundant water. Their king will be greater than Agag. Their kingdom will be exalted. And so this is a promised blessing, this kingship. David is promised a king on the throne forever. And we know that this is a reference to Jesus himself as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But kingship is a promise. And so this isn't necessarily a wrong request. The problem is that the request itself for a king is that in it they reject God. There's the problem. They reject God as their king by making this request. I want you to hear, it's a longer passage, but I want you to hear Samuel's farewell message. This is his last act as prophet officially to the Israelite people. Samuel said to the people, he's installed Saul as king. He says, Samuel said to the people, it's the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you with the evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your ancestors. After Jacob entered Egypt, they cried to the Lord for help. And the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Lord, so he sold them in the hands of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, who fought against them. And they cried out unto the Lord and said, we have sinned. We have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths, but now deliver us from the hands of our enemies, and we will serve you. And the Lord sent Jerubbaal, that's Gideon, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel, the four major judges, Jephthah, Samson's left off because he's a failure. And he delivered you from the hands of your enemies all around you so that you lived in safety. But when you saw that Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, was moving against you, you said to me, no, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. Now here's the king you have chosen, referring to Saul, the one you asked for. See, the Lord has set a king over you. If you fear the Lord and serve him and do not rebel against his commands, and if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, good. But if you do not obey the Lord, and if you rebel against his commands, his hand will be against you, as it was against your ancestors. Now then, stand still and see this great thing the Lord is about to do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest now? I will call on the Lord to send thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did in the eyes of the Lord when you asked for a king. Then Samuel called on the Lord, and that same day the Lord sent thunder and rain, so all the people stood in awe of the Lord and of Samuel. And the people all said to Samuel, pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we will not die, for we have added to all of our other sins the evil of asking for a king. It's a regret, it's a rejection of God, and it is never more clear in verse 20. Verse 20, they say, then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and to fight our battles. Listen to Joshua 10:42. All of these kings and their lands Joshua conquered in one campaign because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Joshua 23:3. You yourselves have seen the Lord your God, what the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. And now they're rejecting the one who has fought for them and saying, no, no, we need a king who will fight for us. And they reject him. We could easily apply this to our own situation, right? In this country right now, we've had these past two presidents who appears very little people like either of them. We should trust God to lead us when we don't like or trust our leadership. We have these two presidents that God has appointed, that God has set up. And I think the greatest example of trusting God to lead us is given to us in, if I can get these straight, is given to us in Romans 11, beginning in verse 1, or Romans 13, beginning in verse 1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For the rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe them taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. God expects us to be led by Him when we don't like the authorities that are over us and we don't trust them. And don't be naive. These guys that Paul is writing about were no better than who we have over us now. God expects us to trust Him to lead us when we don't like or trust our leaders. God expects us to lead us when we desire to be like everyone else. They want a king like everyone else. The problem is not that they want a king like other nations have a king. The problem is they want to be like other nations. They want to be like somebody they're not. They want to be like these other nations that seem to have it together. Isn't that so easy for us? Spiritual as damaged and sinful humans, to want to be like others, to want to have what others have. Isn't it so easy in church for us to fall into that, right? We take a look at the big church. We want the big numbers. We want all the money to come in and provide salaries and provide money for the big programs. We want the stage to look like it's an expensive stage, and we want to have top flight stage work and sound and preaching and all these other things. We want to be like these big churches. We want to be like these successful places. You know, success is kind of misinterpreted sometimes. Oftentimes we believe that numbers and money mean that someone is doing what God's asked them to do or is in God's will. The reverse can be true too, right? We want this tradition. We're going to be in this traditional church. We need pews. We need the piano and the organ. We need the worship leader up there guiding us along. We need the hymnals in the pew in front of us so we can open it up and see the harmony notes we're supposed to sing in the music. We want to be like someone we're not. After all, this is the way we've done it for years. Why would we do it differently now? It's been good for us so far. I had a meeting with the worship team last week because of new leadership and they needed to know what was going on and how we were proceeding. And I told them, we are not going to listen to younger people who say, we need to sing these new songs. We need to sing these songs. We need to sing elevation worship, and we need to do this stuff. We're not going to listen to that. We're not going to listen to old people who say, we're going to sing hymns. That's what we need to do. We need to sing hymns. It was good enough for my day. It's good enough now. We're not going to listen to that. We are going to do the best of everything. And we are going to run the gamut, which is what we have been doing for the last month or so. We're going to sing the new stuff, and we're going to sing the old stuff. And we're going to pick out the best of it. We are not going to sing the frivolous new stuff. We are only going to sing the newer stuff that exalts God and focuses on His character. We are not going to sing the frivolous hymns. Okay, there's a ton of them. Most of us remember the good ones, okay? Like how great thou art and all that. But we are not going to sing when the roll is called up yonder, unless it gets voted on the worship night for us to sing. Then we will sing it. We're not going to sing it. It doesn't say anything important. I remember the first time I heard this song. Now you got to remember, I'm a Yankee. I'm in a Baptist church, a big Baptist church. And first time in a Baptist church, I'm 22 or something like this. And the special music for the offering is the senior adult choir singing "The Roll is Called Up Yonder." Talk about a baptism of fire. To hear the senior adult choir singing, it's like, I was like, yeah, it sounds like you guys are going to be called up any minute right now. And it was just, and of course, me being, it was unvarnished southern accent as well. When the roll is called up yonder, and so, but we're not going to sing that song. We are not going to sing that song. We're going to take the best. We're going to take the best of what has to offer, and we are not going to forget our past. Most of the poor history and difficult history in Israel's life in the Old Testament begins with, and a generation grew up that did not know their God and what He had done for Israel. And that's a direct reference to the Exodus, and we are not going to lose where we came from. But God spoke then, and He still speaks today, and we're going to recognize that He speaks today by continuing to move forward. I teach this Revelation class. Year and a half, we're in chapter 14. A lot of years ago, I taught Revelation in a Sunday school class. It took me a year to get to chapter 12. And we got only through the first few verses of chapter 12. And I told God after that was done, I said, never again. And we're doing it because I believe, He wants us to do it. And it has transformed my life. Now, when I did it the first time, I had all my notes together. I had a stack about like this of handwritten notes. When I took it this time, I said, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to forget or not reference anything I did before. And I'm going to start fresh. And I've started over. Not really teaching anything different, but God has opened the doors. It opened our understanding. And this is a difficult study. We go 4 to 6 weeks, and all of a sudden there's a light bulb moment. And then it's 4 to 6 weeks of drudging through and talking. And people going at me, because they don't understand. And then all of a sudden we get this light bulb moment. A few weeks ago, we got one of those light bulb moments. It says, this was the moment when Christian teachers take their primary cues from the surrounding culture instead of God's word, they corrupt the covenant community, encouraging the covenant community to live by norms opposed to the reign of God in Christ. When we look to what is going around us and order our life on that, we corrupt ourselves, because this is not how God works. God leads us directly. And when we decide we want to be like somebody else, we want to be wealthy, or we want to be like this Christian over here who seems to pray well and I just can't seem to do it, or this person over here that seems to serve so well and I can't seem to do it. We need to lean into God and let God give us his leadership. I had a college ministry that was literally 2 people for a year and a half, maybe even a little more than that. 2 people, 2 guys and me. Awesome college ministry. We actually had 3 for a few weeks, but then he came on the retreat with us, and that was the last we saw of him. And it was just hard. It was hard. And then the spring semester came along after this year and a half of trudging through, and I don't know what happened. God just did something. And we decided we were going to keep through those year and a half, we were going to keep doing what God had asked us to do. It's not that we didn't change plans and we didn't do stuff, but we were going to look to God. And from the beginning of spring semester to Christmas, we went from 2 to 75 every week. And everybody just seemed to be on fire for God. All these students, all these college students, just on fire for God. Everybody was called to ministry. I'm called to ministry. Everybody was called to ministry. And so I started inserting people into teaching and that kind of stuff. Everybody wanted to be a teacher, and everybody wanted to have this. They had this kind of common outlook. Everybody wanted to be like each other. And I had to take a few aside after letting them teach and say, look, I don't think God's calling you to teach. It was hard. It was hard for them. It wasn't received very well. But they had to let go of this desire to be like someone they were not in order to have God work in them. And the desire to be led by someone other than God, the desire to be like someone else at its core is idolatry. That's what God says in verse 8. He says, they've rejected me since the day I let them out of Egypt. And we don't have idols that we make and we bow down to. But we do look to others and covet what we don't have, don't we? We need to understand who God has made us to be. Find out what God has given us to do and live that to the full. And let God lead us and work and mold and direct our dreams. So we should trust God to lead us when we don't like or trust our leaders. We should trust God to lead us when we desire to be like others. And we should definitely trust God when we don't want to listen. So God says, listen to him. Give him a king. Here's the lowdown. Here's what the king is going to cost you personally when you get a king, okay? The personal cost of a king who leads you is he is going to take your sons. He's going to take your daughters. He's going to take the best of your fields and vineyards and your produce. He is going to take 10% of what you produce. He is going to take your servants, your cattle, your donkeys. He's going to take 10% of your flocks. You will cease to be free, and you will become slaves. Isn't that just where God brought them from? Slaves in Egypt. And their response is, yep, we sign up for it. And God says, when you realize that you're a slave again, and you don't like it anymore, you're going to call out to me, and I'm going to ignore you. When we don't listen, I was part of a pastoral staff at a church. It was a charismatic church. I've been on pastoral staff at charismatic churches, non-charismatic churches. And so they had time in the service for speaking in tongues and giving a word of knowledge and exercising gifts like that. And we had an individual who was taking this time, and she had the gift of prophecy, and this person would prophesy during this time. But what she was prophesying was not appropriate for her to prophesy. She clearly had the gift. She was speaking things she knew nothing of. God was clearly speaking in her ear and talking to her. But her prophecy was a reprimand of the leadership. Every few weeks, she'd stand up, and she'd give this prophecy and reprimand the leadership. And so finally, I got tired of this. And in the elders meeting, I said, look, I'm the youth pastor, okay? I'm the youth pastor at this church at this time. And I said, look, you got to address this. This is not appropriate for what she's doing. She has the gift. We all know she has the gift. It's clear. It's obvious. But this is not the appropriate time for her to express herself in this way. And it was good men, loved the Lord, but the pastor and the elders were timid, and they just said, we can't do this. We just can't tell somebody to be quiet in the service. And so they said, you do it. So I said, okay. And what I decided to do was, instead of waiting until she prophesied again and telling her to be quiet in public, I scheduled a meeting with this person. I sat down with him, and I said, look, you clearly have the gift of prophecy. God is clearly speaking to you. And the appropriate way for you to use this is to pray for us in leadership. And if you need to speak out, to speak to us at an elder meeting and tell us what God has told you. Church is not the time for this kind of message. And to her credit and her maturity, she agreed and did not prophesy in that way again. She listened and let God lead. And we need to listen and let God lead, right? What does Samuel do, right? People say, hey, we want a king. We want a king to lead us and to fight our battles. And Samuel's first thought is, bad idea. But he doesn't say anything to him, does he? He says the scripture says this was evil, or this was a bad idea to Samuel. And so Samuel went and talked to God and let God speak and tell him what to do first. That's what it means to trust the Lord. If we cannot submit and respect the authority that God has placed over us, and we cannot let go of our desires to be like someone else, we will never be in a position to listen to God, and we will always be one who doesn't want to listen. And that's a big key for us about whether God is leading us. Just because you listen doesn't mean you need to do what's been told to you. But if we are unwilling to listen, we are probably in a place where we're unwilling to let God lead us. And so we need to listen. We should trust God to lead us because He is King. We should trust Him to lead us when we don't like or trust our leaders. You see, we can be led by God even though there is no change in leadership. Change in leadership has nothing to do with whether we individually are led by God. We should trust God because He is King, and we should trust us to lead us when we desire to be like everyone else. Because we can be led by God, regardless of whether we're getting the ministry that we're aspiring to. We can be led by God, regardless of whether we're making steps to become like the person we admire. We can be led by God regardless of whether we are achieving any success for our goals. Whether we are like someone else or not has nothing to do with whether we are being led by God. We should trust God because He is King, and we should trust Him to lead us because we can be led by God regardless of whether our circumstances change or not. Our circumstances have nothing to do with whether God is leading us or not. In fact, if you want to sum up the book of Revelation in a short sentence, the book of Revelation is, you are going to suffer the judgment of God on some level on this earth, but you are to trust me to lead you. The book of Revelation has a phrase that Jesus used, hear what the Spirit is saying. And that is, for us, when we hear the Spirit, we have discernment, and we have understanding, and we have peace, and our hope is in God to lead us, not in what is going on around us. We do not conduct our lives based around our circumstances. We conduct our lives knowing that God is King, and He will lead us if we give Him that place to do so. Let's pray. God, I thank You for Your word. It can be so difficult sometimes. It's just difficult to trust You when we don't understand and don't like what's going on around us. But You are here to lead us, and You are here to give us hope. Help us to release ourselves to You. Help us right now to just identify some area in our life where we are not allowing You to lead us. And as we identify that area, help us learn to speak the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, to speak Jesus into the situation. to release ourselves and our concerns and to cast our cares on him. So that we can trust him to lead us in all of our circumstances. Amen. You may